I was 7 months pregnant when my parents showed up at my doorstep with a moving truck. They said they were there to help me relocate. But I hadn't asked for help. I hadn't planned to move. And I certainly hadn't agreed to leave the home I had worked so hard to build. What made it worse was their reason. It wasn't about my health. It wasn't about making things easier for me. No, it was about making room for my brother's unborn son. Yes, while I was carrying a child alone preparing to become a single mother, my parents thought it made more sense for me to vacate my home, so my younger brother Ryan and his wife could raise their firstborn, a boy, in a more suitable environment. That home was mine. I bought it, I designed it, I made every decision about every inch of it. It was where I had finally started to feel safe again after years of trying to recover from a painful divorce and a life of second-place status in my own family. But apparently none of that mattered, because I was a woman, because I was single, because I was carrying a daughter, and because Ryan's son was, in my parents' words, the future of the family. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been pushed aside for someone else's dreams, or had your own voice drowned out by the noise of what's expected of you, then this story may sound painfully familiar. I didn't expect to end up calling the police that day. I didn't expect to stand alone in my living room while my own mother sorted my belongings into boxes labeled "Keep and Donate." But I did, and I stood my ground. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about claiming space, about choosing respect, about standing up especially when you're expected to stay quiet. Because when they came with that truck, they didn't just try to move my furniture. They tried to move me out of my home, out of their way, and out of the version of the family they had always wanted. And I decided to say no. My name is Claire Dawson. I'm 34 years old, and I've been working as an architect for nearly a decade. I design spaces that make people feel safe, places where people can breathe, grow, and rebuild. Ironically, that's exactly what I had hoped to do for myself when I bought my first home 2 years ago. It was a quiet 3-bedroom on the edge of town. Nothing extravagant, but it had charm. A wraparound porch, creaky hardwood floors, and a kitchen window that overlooked the old oak tree I loved as a child. It was the kind of house where I could start over, not just survive. I bought it after my marriage ended. My ex-husband Andrew and I had separated after 5 years together. We tried everything, counseling time apart, even one of those clean break retreats. But in the end, I realized I was holding on to someone who had already let go. The divorce wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, cold, like most things in my life. After the papers were signed, I threw myself into work. I picked up extra projects, said yes to every client, and kept my schedule packed so I wouldn't have time to feel the loneliness that crept in during quiet evenings. That's how I saved enough for the down payment. Not from help, not from family gifts or inheritance. Just hard work. Mine. The house became my project. I spent weekends repainting walls, building furniture, and assembling bookshelves I never got around to filling. Each nail and screw felt like a declaration I'm still here. I'm still standing. Then last year I found out I was pregnant. I didn't plan it. The father was someone I dated briefly, someone who left as soon as he heard the word baby. I was scared, terrified even. But I kept the baby, not out of stubbornness, not to prove anything. I kept her because she was mine. Because for the first time in a long while, I felt something other than grief. I told my parents a few weeks after I got past the first trimester. I expected hesitation. I even braced for disappointment. What I didn't expect was complete dismissal. My mother blinked a few times and said, "Well, I guess you'll have to downsize." Downsize, like my pregnancy was a mistake I needed to adjust for. Like the child I was carrying didn't deserve a full life, a proper home, or space to grow. It stung. But it didn't surprise me. That's how it had always been. My family didn't celebrate my milestones. They acknowledged them with polite nods. When I graduated with honors, they missed the ceremony because of my brother's basketball game. When I landed my first job at a respected firm, they asked if it came with a good dental plan, so I stopped expecting applause. Still, I thought that maybe, just maybe, becoming a mother would change something, that they might finally see me as someone worth rooting for, that I might matter more. But as it turned out, my pregnancy only reminded them of what they valued most, and it wasn't me. Growing up, I learned early that my role in the family was to be dependable, not celebrated. I'm the oldest of two. My younger brother Ryan is 4 years younger than me. From the moment he was born, everything shifted. It wasn't just that he was the baby, it was the way everyone's world began to revolve around him. My parents, especially my father, were openly proud of him in a way I had never experienced. When I brought home straight A's, my father would glance at my report card and grunt, "Keep it up." When Ryan passed a class he'd nearly failed, they took him out for pizza and bought him a new video game. He was the center of attention at every family gathering. Holidays became about Ryan's soccer tournaments or his latest girlfriend drama. I became the one who helped clean up the dishes, the one who understood responsibility. By the time I was 10, I had figured out that my achievements had an expiration date in their eyes. Celebrate it quietly, move on. Don't expect praise. I still remember one particular moment with painful clarity. I had saved up allowance and birthday money for nearly a year to buy my first telescope. I had developed a fascination with the stars and spent nights reading library books about constellations. When I finally brought it home, I showed it to my parents, excited and proud. My mom glanced at it and said, "That's nice, honey. Just make sure you don't stay up too late." A week later, Ryan got a new baseball bat. They threw him a backyard party with neighbors, invited grilled hamburgers, and gave him a framed poster of his favorite player. At first, I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being oversensitive, that maybe it was just a phase. But that phase lasted decades. When it came time to apply for college, I researched scholarships, wrote every essay, and filled out every application myself. My parents offered to review my essays, but I knew better than to expect any financial support. I got into a solid program with a partial scholarship, took on student loans, and worked part-time at the campus bookstore. Ryan, on the other hand, got into a private college that cost nearly double what mine did. My parents paid his full tuition, bought him a car, and covered his living expenses. When I brought it up years later, my father simply said, "He's got a lot of pressure, Claire. He needs support." That was the pattern. I was self-sufficient, so they poured their energy into Ryan, who never had to be. Every success I earned became the reason they could ignore me. Every struggle I faced became an example of how strong I was. They didn't realize, or maybe they didn't care, that being strong wasn't the same as not needing support. That doing things alone wasn't a choice. It was a necessity. After college, I moved out and rarely came home. Holidays became strained. I was always expected to show up, bring a side dish, and catch up with relatives I barely knew. Meanwhile, Ryan was always the one telling stories, cracking jokes, and being fawned over. Even after I became a licensed architect and started working on major city projects, my parents only mentioned my job when someone else brought it up. When Ryan got engaged, my parents gave him and his fiancée a down payment for their first condo. When I bought my house 2 years later, they said, "You're really doing well for yourself." And then added, "Isn't that neighborhood a little far out?" Over the years, I stopped telling them things. I stopped inviting them to celebrations, not out of bitterness, but out of quiet resignation. So when I told them I was pregnant and their first reaction was concern over space, not joy, I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just nodded, hung up the phone, and sat on the couch with one hand on my belly, wondering what kind of childhood my daughter would have. I promised her in that moment that she would never feel the way I had growing up. She would never wonder if she was second best. She would never have to earn her worth in the eyes of the people who were supposed to love her unconditionally. She would know she was enough exactly as she is. My pregnancy wasn't part of a grand plan, but it felt like something I was meant to do. After years of silence, of being the responsible one, the invisible one carrying a life inside me gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I went through the first few months alone. There were morning sicknesses and quiet nights reading baby books in bed. There were anxious moments in waiting rooms and a soft, almost secret kind of joy that bloomed when I heard the heartbeat for the first time. It wasn't easy, but it was mine when I finally told my parents I wasn't expecting a parade. But I hoped for something, some kind of warmth. My father blinked and asked, "Are you going to be okay financially?" My mother looked uncomfortable and said, "Is the father involved?" I said no, and that I would be raising her on my own. The room fell quiet. Then my mother added, "Well, I suppose you'll have to make some changes. That house of yours might be too much to manage, especially with a baby on the way." That was it. No congratulations, no we're here for you. Just a casual suggestion that I give up the one place where I felt secure. I didn't respond. I didn't want to cry in front of them. I just nodded, slowly changed the subject, and left after dessert. A few weeks later, my brother Ryan and his wife Jenna announced they were expecting too. The reaction could not have been more different. My mother cried. My father opened a bottle of wine. They toasted the future of the family. I had been 6 months pregnant when they found out. Ryan and Jenna had only just crossed the first trimester. From that moment on, every family conversation became about their baby. The registry, the nursery theme, the gender reveal. Jenna was having a boy, and that seemed to elevate the entire event to something sacred. They asked me nothing about my pregnancy, not once. When I brought it up, how I was planning to turn the second bedroom into a nursery, or how I was researching cloth diapers, my comments were met with polite nods or quickly diverted. At first, I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need validation, but it did matter, because I wasn't just doing this for me. I was trying to create a better experience for my child than I had. And the silence hurt. It was like I was pregnant in the shadows. No excitement, no family photos, no shared joy. Just absence. And then came the question that changed everything. My mother called one evening and casually asked, "Have you considered moving closer to the hospital? Something smaller might be easier to manage. Maybe even closer to Jenna so she can have help when the babies come." Babies, plural, as if mine didn't count unless it came as part of a set. That was the first time I felt something crack inside me. Not anger, not yet, but something colder. I didn't answer her question, 'cause I already knew the answer. No, I wouldn't move. No, I wouldn't give up my home. But I also knew they weren't done asking. In the weeks that followed, the subtle suggestions became more frequent and less subtle. At first, it was just phone calls. My mother would ask how I was feeling, then find a way to bring up the house. "You know, Claire, when Ryan and Jenna have their baby, they'll really need more space. Their lease is up in a few months, and they haven't found anything suitable. Apartments are just so cramped for babies. Don't you think I'd respond with a vague, 'Yeah, I'm sure they'll figure it out'?" Then my dad started chiming in. He rarely called me just to chat, so when he did, I braced myself. "You know that third bedroom in your house? It would make a great nursery. And the yard, it's perfect for a little boy to run around. I'm not saying anything needs to happen right away, but it's something to think about." It was always delivered like that, friendly, casual, almost innocent. But it didn't feel innocent. Not when I knew how these conversations had gone in the past. I had seen it before. A small suggestion turned into a strong expectation, and then suddenly the decision wasn't mine anymore. I tried redirecting, changing the subject, even making jokes. "Well, good thing I have my own baby coming to use the space." But they wouldn't let it go. When I reached my 7th month, they started showing up more often. My mother would bring over food or old baby clothes from storage, always accompanied by a quick glance around the house. She'd look at the nursery I was building and comment, "I suppose you're set on painting it yellow." Or, "It's a bit small for two, don't you think?" Then came the day Jenna visited with my mom. I didn't expect her, but I welcomed her in. She looked around politely, complimented the curtains, and then stared at the guest room door for a beat too long. "Wow," she said, "this room gets so much natural light. It would be perfect for a crib." I said nothing. Later that evening, I overheard my mom say to her, "Well, we'll figure something out. You and Ryan deserve the best start." That night, I sat on the couch with my hand on my belly, watching the shadows move across the wall, and I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. Rage. It didn't roar. It simmered, quiet, controlled, but deeply rooted. Because I knew what was coming next. I could see it. The way they were circling. The way they spoke as if decisions were already made. I told Audrey, my best friend, everything. We'd been close since college, and she had seen the dynamics in my family from the outside. "They're grooming you to give it up," she said. "They're not asking, they're telling, just using a nicer voice." I nodded. "They don't think you'll fight back," she added. "They think you'll do what you always do, make space for Ryan." I had no words, because she was right. Then came the message that proved everything. One afternoon, I got a group text from my parents, Ryan and Jenna. It included a link to a listing for a studio apartment in a building across town. "It's so close to the hospital," my mom wrote, "and fully furnished. We thought this might be perfect for you and the baby. Less to clean, less to manage. We even called and inquired. It's still available." No one had asked if I wanted to move. No one had asked if I could afford it or wanted to give up the home I had spent years creating. They had already decided. I didn't respond. The next day, my father stopped by unannounced. He walked through the house slowly, like he was appraising it. At one point, he said, "You've done a great job with this place, Claire. It's really come together." I almost smiled until he added, "You know, Ryan could really use a backyard like this. That apartment they're in, there's no room for a playset." That was when I said it out loud. "Dad, I'm not giving them my house." He blinked, taken aback. "We're not asking you to give it to them. Just make a temporary sacrifice. Family helps family." "I am family," I said. "So is my daughter." He didn't respond, just shook his head like I didn't understand something obvious, like I was the one being unreasonable. When he left, I locked the door behind him. For the first time in a long while, I felt a boundary form not just in words but in my bones. They weren't going to stop on their own, and I was done pretending I didn't see it coming. It happened on a Saturday morning. The sun was barely up, and I was still in my robe halfway through a cup of decaf tea when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I waddled to the doorbell first and opened it to find two delivery men standing on my porch next to several large boxes. "Delivery for Dawson," one of them said, glancing at a clipboard. "Baby crib dresser and rocking chair." I frowned. "You must have the wrong address." He double-checked. "Claire Dawson, 222 West Maple." "That's me," I said slowly, "but I didn't order any furniture." He turned the clipboard toward me. Under purchaser, the name read, Jenna Matthews, my brother's wife. My heart sank. "I'm sorry," I said. "There's been a mistake. This wasn't authorized. I don't want these delivered." The men exchanged an awkward look. "We can take them back to the truck, but you'll need to contact the sender to reschedule or cancel." I nodded, barely hearing them. My mind was spinning. They had ordered furniture to my home, for their baby, without asking, without telling me. It wasn't an accident. This was a statement. An hour later, I got a text from my mother. "We'll be by around noon to talk. Don't worry, we'll take care of everything." I didn't respond. By noon, I was pacing in my living room, a tight ball of anxiety forming in my chest. I kept looking out the window, hoping maybe foolishly that this was all just some huge misunderstanding. But then I saw the truck. A full-size commercial moving truck pulled into my driveway. Behind it was Ryan's SUV. My parents stepped out of the truck first. My dad wore a baseball cap and sunglasses, as if that made this seem casual. My mom was smiling an unnatural, too-wide smile that made my stomach churn. Then came Ryan and Jenna. Jenna was 4 months pregnant and carrying a purse the size of a diaper bag. She had one hand on her small baby bump and the other waving like this was a surprise birthday party. I opened the door but didn't step outside. "What is this?" I asked. My mom's voice was chipper. "Surprise. We're here to help you move." I stared at her, not sure I had heard right. "Move where I asked," my voice flat. "Well," she began, as if explaining to a confused child we talked about this. "You've got a lot on your plate, sweetie. With the baby coming, it'll be much easier for you in that studio we found. It's already furnished. Less stress, less mess," my dad added. "And we've got everything lined up. The movers are on the clock. We'll have you packed and settled by dinner." Jenna smiled sweetly. "We already started ordering things for the nursery. I just love the light in the guest room. It'll be perfect." That's when I felt it sharp and undeniable. They weren't suggesting anymore. They were executing. They had made plans. They had rented a moving truck. They had purchased furniture. They had chosen my new apartment, all without my consent. And now they were here to carry it out. I stepped outside, trying to stay calm. "You are not moving me out of my house." My mother tilted her head like she was disappointed. "Claire, this is what's best. You're too emotional to see it right now, but you'll thank us later." "I'm not leaving," I said. "Don't be selfish," my dad snapped. "This house is too much for you. You've got no partner, no help. You need to focus on your baby." I laughed, bitter and short. "So your solution is to take my house and give it to Ryan temporarily?" Jenna cut in. "Just until we get settled. You know how expensive things are. And it's not like you don't have other options." My hands were shaking. "You can't just move me out. This house is mine. I bought it. I pay the mortgage. My name is on every document." "But you don't need all this space," my mother insisted. "You'll be much more comfortable somewhere small. And Ryan, he's going to be a father. He needs support." "I'm going to be a mother," I reminded her. "And I don't need to be evicted from my own home to prove that I can handle it." My father walked past me, opened the back of the truck, and started unloading empty boxes. "Let's just get started. The sooner we're done, the sooner everyone can relax." My mom brushed by me into the house like she owned it. Jenna followed her inside, already pointing out where the crib could go. Ryan stayed by the SUV silent. I stood on my own porch, pregnant and stunned, watching my family begin to erase me from my own life. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. Then Audrey's voice echoed in my head. "They think you won't fight back." And something inside me shifted. I stepped back into my house and followed them into the living room. My dad had opened a box and was wrapping picture frames. My mom was in the kitchen pulling dishes from the cabinets. I raised my voice sharp and clear. "Stop! Put everything down. This ends now." My mother turned annoyed. "Claire, don't start. I'm not moving. I didn't ask for help." "You're not doing this out of love. You're doing this because you think you can decide for me. But you can't." Jenna looked up from her phone. "Claire, don't overreact. We're family." "No," I said. "You're not acting like family. You're acting like invaders." No one moved. No one apologized. They just stared at me, waiting for me to give in. I didn't. I picked up my phone, walked into the hallway, and dialed 911. My hands were shaking as I waited for the dispatcher to answer. I could hear my family moving around behind me. Boxes, sliding drawers, opening footsteps in every room like termites eating through the structure of my life. When the dispatcher came on the line, I didn't hesitate. "My name is Claire Dawson," I said. "I need police assistance. My family is in my home, trying to move me out against my will. They've brought a moving truck. They won't leave." The dispatcher asked if I felt physically threatened. I said no, but explained that they were removing my belongings and attempting to force me to leave a property I own. "I've asked them to stop. They won't." She took my address and said officers would be there shortly. She advised me to stay calm and avoid confrontation until they arrived. I hung up and walked back into the living room. My dad was sealing a box with packing tape. My mother was in my bedroom. Jenna was standing in the hallway talking on speakerphone with someone from the furniture store, asking about delivery dates. I took a deep breath. "I've called the police." Everything went still. My father turned toward me, tape gun in hand. "You did what I called the police?" I repeated louder this time. "I've told you to leave." "You didn't. You're trespassing. This is my home, and I didn't invite you here to dismantle it." My mother appeared in the doorway holding a stack of my folded clothes. "Claire, you're being dramatic." "No," I said. "You're being invasive." "You're pregnant," she said, lowering her voice like she was concerned. "You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking more clearly than I ever have." Ryan came in, then finally stepping out of his silent corner. He looked uncomfortable, like he'd just walked into a courtroom and realized he was on trial. "Claire, come on," he said. "You really want to make this a legal issue? I didn't want any of this," I said, gesturing around the room. "You brought it here." "We were just trying to help," Jenna added, her arms crossed. "No," I said. "You were trying to take what wasn't yours." The room filled with silence. Then my father snapped, "We're your family." "You don't call the police on your family, you do," I said, "when they won't respect your boundaries." 10 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived, one male, one female. They stepped into my living room, took one look at the boxes, and turned to me. "Are you the homeowner?" the female officer asked. "Yes," I said. "Claire Dawson. I bought this house 2 years ago. I live here alone. No one else is on the mortgage or deed." The male officer nodded. "And these people, my parents, my brother, his wife." He turned to them. "Did you have permission to enter the home and start removing items?" My mother stepped forward. "We're her parents. We're just trying to help her relocate before the baby comes. She's overwhelmed." The female officer raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, being related doesn't give you the right to enter someone's private residence without consent." My dad scoffed. "We pay for plenty of things in her life. Don't act like we're strangers." I shook my head. "No, they don't. Not the mortgage, not the bills, nothing. They've never paid for anything in this house. Do you want them to leave?" The officer asked me directly. "Yes," I said, immediately. The officers asked my family to step outside while they clarified the situation. I watched them walk out, stunned and indignant. When the officers came back, they confirmed everything I already knew. I was fully within my rights to ask them to leave. If they continued to refuse, I could file a trespassing report or press charges for attempted unlawful eviction or removal of personal property. I don't want to escalate things that far. I said, "But I need them to understand I'm serious." "We'll make sure they do," the male officer said. They walked back outside with me and told my family it was time to go. They needed to remove all the items from the truck that belonged to me and return them inside. Anything purchased without my permission needed to be removed from the property. My parents didn't say a word to me. My dad muttered something under his breath. Jenna burst into tears. Ryan stared at the sidewalk. They carried the boxes back inside under police supervision. The crib, the rocker, the bags of baby clothes that weren't mine. It took nearly an hour. When they were done, the officers watched them drive off. Then the female officer turned to me and asked gently, "Are you okay?" I paused, then nodded. "I am now." They advised me to change my locks and document anything that had been moved or damaged just in case. I thanked them and closed the door behind me. For the first time in weeks, the house was quiet again. Still mine, still home. The silence didn't last long. Less than 24 hours after the moving truck left my driveway, my phone started lighting up with messages, texts, voicemails, and notifications from social media. I didn't need to look to know who was behind it. My mother had posted on Facebook. The caption read, "When your pregnant daughter calls the police on her own family, you realize the world really has changed. We were only trying to help her relocate for her own good and for the sake of her child." Some people forget what family means. The post included a carefully cropped photo of the moving truck in my driveway with no context, of course, just enough to let the family gossip machinery get to work. The comments poured in. "Unbelievable. You raised her better than that. Kids these days have no respect. Poor Ryan and Jenna. They deserve that house more anyway." No one asked for my side of the story. Aunt Carol called to tell me she was disappointed and that pregnancy hormones must be clouding my judgment. Uncle Steve messaged me asking if I was okay, and then immediately followed it with, "But surely there was a better way to handle this." My cousin Emily sent a voice note saying she couldn't believe I would choose property over people. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I turned off my phone and sat in the nursery, the one I had painted myself with walls the color of warm sunlight, and a rocking chair in the corner I had chosen months ago. The same room my sister-in-law had tried to claim as her own, with a stranger's crib already measured to fit the wall. The air felt heavy, but not with regret. It was the weight of years of being quiet, polite understanding. Years of being overlooked, dismissed, expected to carry myself without complaint while others were handed things freely. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just done. But Audrey wasn't. She called as soon as she saw the post. "This is absolutely insane," she said. "You should sue them for defamation. At the very least, make your own post and tell people what actually happened." "I'm not going to turn this into a public fight," I said. "That's what they want." "You're being too kind," she snapped. "They tried to steal your home." "I know," I said quietly. but I need to protect my peace more than I need to win a social media argument. Still, Audrey left a detailed comment under the post. So did a few other close friends who had seen the aftermath, heard the full story, and refused to let the lie go unchecked. The post was eventually taken down, but the damage had already been done. The people who believed them still believed them. The ones who knew better didn't need a post to tell them the truth. Then the harassment shifted. My parents started calling my office. At first, it was just once my mom asking if I'd calmed down and whether I'd reconsidered the apartment. Then came another call from my dad claiming he wanted to help me with future planning. Then another. My supervisor, Diane, called me into her office after the third call. She was kind, but concerned. "Claire, is everything okay? Your parents have been calling, and I want to make sure you're protected here. I know how these things can get complicated." That afternoon, I made a decision I had never imagined myself making. I called Audrey's cousin Mark, a lawyer who specialized in family and civil matters. Within a few days, he helped me draft and send a formal cease and desist letter to my parents, to Ryan and to Jenna. The letter stated clearly and legally that they were to cease any further attempts to contact me through personal or professional channels, refrain from defamatory statements or social media posts related to me or my property, stay away from my home without explicit invitation. It wasn't a restraining order. Not yet. But it was the first brick in the wall I was building around my peace. Mark also helped me document the entire incident, the deliveries, the texts, the photos, and the call logs. He told me that if they persisted, we could take it further. The letter worked, the calls stopped, the messages ceased. But so did any semblance of relationship. No one apologized. No one reached out to say they understood. What I got instead was a silence so loud it seemed to echo through the walls of my house. But it was a silence I could live with, because for the first time in my life I had drawn a line and held it. My daughter was born on a cool Thursday morning in late spring. Her birth was quiet, calm. There were no dramatic rushes to the hospital, no last-minute crises. Just me, a kind nurse named Melissa, and a delivery room filled with soft light and steady breath. When they placed her in my arms for the first time, I cried, not because of the pain or the relief, but because of how fiercely I loved her the moment I saw her face. I named her Hope, not just because of what she meant to me, but because of what I wanted her to grow up believing in. Hope that she would never feel second to anyone. Hope that she would never need to fight for space in a family that should already make room for her. Hope that love wouldn't come with conditions. I brought her home 2 days later. The house felt different with her in it, not just quieter or softer, but more complete. Every room seemed to take on new meaning. The nursery I had built with my own hands was no longer a space of tension or fear. It was hers now, and because it was hers, it became mine again, too. My parents didn't reach out. Neither did Ryan or Jenna. I didn't expect them to. But a week after I brought Hope home, I received a message from Ryan. Just a text. "Claire, I want to apologize. I should have said something. I knew it was wrong, but I let it happen. I was afraid of disappointing them. I understand now what that cost you. And I'm sorry. Jenna had the baby. His name is Mason. But I thought you should know. You have a niece now, and he has a cousin. Congratulations on Hope." I stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't enough to undo what happened, but it was something. A small crack in the wall that had formed between us. I didn't write back right away. But later that evening, with Hope sleeping against my chest, I typed, "Thank you for the message. And for the apology. Congratulations on Mason. I'm not ready for more than this yet, but I don't want to close the door forever." I hit send, and then held my daughter closer. There would be more healing to do. There would be more conversations, maybe one day. But I wasn't in a rush. I had everything I needed right there in my arms. My world didn't revolve around whether my family accepted me anymore. It revolved around the little girl who looked at me like I was her entire universe, and maybe, just maybe, I was starting to believe it too. It's been almost a year since that day my parents pulled into my driveway with a moving truck ready to erase the life I had built. A lot has changed since then. Some of those changes were forced, others were chosen, but all of them were mine. I didn't get revenge the way people often imagine it. No explosive confrontations, no dramatic courtroom battles, no viral tell-all videos. I didn't expose my parents or ruin their reputations. I didn't strike back. I stood still. I stood firm. And that, it turns out, was enough. My life today is quieter than it used to be, more peaceful. Not because the world has become easier, but because I've become clearer about what I will allow in it. Hope is growing. She has her father's eyes and my quiet patience. She coos when I read to her, laughs when the light hits the window just right. She doesn't know what I gave up to give her a home free of manipulation, control, and resentment. And she never will, because she won't need to. She will grow up in a house that isn't big because someone else says so, but because it fits us just right. She will see pictures of herself on every wall, not baby furniture that was meant for someone else's child. She'll know her mother didn't bend or break when pressured. She'll know I stood my ground not because I was stubborn, but because I was worthy. That's the revenge. Living a life of dignity. Refusing to shrink to make others comfortable. Choosing peace over chaos, truth over manipulation, and love, real love, over obligation. I still don't speak to my parents. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. I finally understood that sometimes family can be the loudest voice telling you to forget who you are. But I won't forget. They once tried to pack up my life in a moving truck, reduce me to a single-room existence, hand my home over to someone else as if I were invisible. Now I walk through each room with my daughter on my hip light, pouring in through the windows, and I know exactly who I am. I am not selfish. I am not cold. I am not difficult. I am someone who built something beautiful and then protected it. And when my daughter is old enough to ask me why it's just the two of us, I will tell her the truth. That sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most don't know how. And when that happens, you don't let them take more. You love them from a distance if you can. And if you can't, you let go with grace, with truth, and with your dignity intact.